Chapter 5 of The Case of the Lamp That Went Out, by Auguste Groner, translated by Grace Isabel Cobron. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. By a thread. It was on Monday, the 27th of September, that Leopold Winkler was murdered and robbed, and early on Tuesday, the 28th, his body was found. That day, the evening papers printed the report of the murder and the description of the dead man, and on Wednesday, the 29th, Mrs. Klingmeyer read the news and went to see Winkler's employer. By noon of that day, the body was identified, and a description of the stolen purse and watch telegraphed to police headquarters in various cities. A few hours later, these police stations had sent out notices by messenger to all pawnshops and dealers in second-hand clothing, and now the machinery of the law sat waiting for some news of an attempt on the part of the robber and murderer to get rid of his plunder. On this same Wednesday, about the twilight hour, David Goldstam, dealer in second-hand clothing, stood before the door of his shop in a side street of the old Hungarian city of Pressburg, and watched his assistant take down the clothes which were hanging outside and carry them into the store. The old man's eyes glanced carelessly up and down the street, and caught sight of a man who turned the corner and came hurrying towards him. This man was a very seedy-looking individual. An old faded overcoat hung about his thin figure, and a torn and dusty hat fell over his left eye. He seemed also to be much the worse for liquor and very wobbly on his feet, and yet he seemed anxious to hurry onward in spite of the unevenness of his walk. Then he slowed up suddenly, glanced across the street to Goldstam's store, and crossed over. "Have you any boots for me?" he asked, sticking out his right foot, that the dealer might see whether he had anything the requisite size. "I think there's something there," answered the old man in his usual business-like tone, leading the way into the store. The stranger followed. Goldstam lit the one light in the little place, and groped about in an untidy heap of shoes of all kinds and sizes until he found several pairs that he thought might fit. These he brought out and put them in front of his customer. But in spite of his bleary eyes, the man caught sight of some patches on the uppers of one pair and pushed them away from him. "Give me something better than that. I can pay for it. I don't have to wear patched shoes," he grunted. Goldstam didn't like the looks of the man, but he felt that he had better be careful and not make him angry. "Have patience, sir. I'll find you something better," he said gently, tossing the heap about again, but now keeping his face turned towards his customer. "I want a coat also, and a warm pair of trousers," said the stranger in a rough voice. He bent down to loosen the shabby boot from his right foot, and as he did so, something fell out of the pocket of his coat. An unconscious motion of his own raised foot struck this small object and tossed it into the middle of the heap of shoes close by Goldstam's hand. The old man reached out after it and caught it. It was just an ordinary brown leather pocketbook of medium size, old and shabby, like 1,000 others. But the eyes of the little old man widened as if in terror. His face turned pale, and his hands trembled. For he had seen, hanging from one side of this worn brown leather pocketbook, the end of a yellow thread, the loosened end of the thread with which one side of the purse was mended. The thread told David Goldstam who it was that had come into his shop. He regained his control with a desperate effort of the will. It took him but a few seconds to do so, and thanks to his partial intoxication, the customer had not noticed the shopkeeper's start of alarm. But he appeared anxious and impatient to regain possession of his purse. "Haven't you found it yet?" he exclaimed. Goldstam hastened to give it back. The tramp put the purse in his pocket with a sigh of relief. Goldstam had regained his calm, and his mind was working eagerly. He put several pairs of shoes before his customer with the remark, "You must try them on. We'll find something to suit you, and meanwhile I will bring in several pairs of trousers from those outside. I have some fine coats to show you, too." Goldstam went out to the door, almost colliding there with his assistant, who was coming in with his armful of garments. The old man motioned to the boy, who retreated until they were both hidden from the view of the man within the store. "Give me those blue trousers there," said Goldstam in a loud voice. Then in a whisper he said to the boy, "Run to the police station. The man with the watch and the purse is in there." The boy understood and set off at once at a fast pace, while the old man returned to his store with a heavy heart. He wondered whether he would be able to keep the murderer there until the police could come. And he also wondered what it might cost him, an old and feeble man who would be as a weak reed in the hands of the strong tramp in there. But he knew it was his duty to do whatever he could to help in the arrest of one who had just taken the life of a fellow creature. The realization of this gave the old man strength and calmness. "A nice sort of eye for size you have," cried the tramp as the old man came up to him. "I suppose you brought me in a boy's suit? What do you take me for? Any girl could go to a ball in the shoes you brought me to try on here." "Are they so much too small?" asked the dealer in an innocent tone. "Well, there's plenty more there, and perhaps you had better be trying on this suit, behind the curtain here, while I'm hunting up the shoes." This suggestion seemed to please the stranger, as he was evidently in a hurry. He passed in behind the curtain and began to undress. Goldstam's keen eyes watched him through a crack. There was not much to be seen except that the tramp seemed anxious to keep his overcoat within reach of his hand. He had carefully put the purse in one of its pockets. "We'll get the things all together pretty soon," said the dealer. "I found a pair of boots here, fine boots of good quality, and sure to fit." "Stop your talk," growled the other, "and come here and help me so that I can get away." Goldstam came forward, and though his heart was very heavy within him, he aided this man about whom so many hundreds were now thinking in terror, as calmly as he had aided his other poor but honest customers. With hands that did not tremble, the dealer busied himself about his customer, listening all the while to sounds in the street, and hoped that his tête-à-tête with the murderer would soon be over. But in spite of all his natural anxiety, the old man's sharp eyes took cognizance of various things, one of which was that the man whom he was helping to dress in his new clothes did not have the watch which was described in the police notice. This fact, however, did not make the old man's heart any lighter, for the purse mended with yellow thread was too clearly the one stolen from the murdered man found in the quiet street in Hietzinger. "What's the matter with you? You're so slow. I can get along better myself," growled the tramp, pushing the old man away from him. Goldstam had really begun to tremble now in spite of his control, in the fear that the man would get away from him before the police came. The tramp was already dressed in the new suit, into a pocket of which he put the old purse. "There, now the boots, and then we're finished," said the dealer with an attempt at a smile. In his heart he prayed that the pair he now held in his hand might not fit, that he might gain a few minutes more. But the shoes did fit. A little pushing and stamping, and the man was ready to leave the store. He was evidently in a hurry, for he paid what was asked without any attempt to bargain. Had Goldstam not known whom he had before him now, he would have been very much astonished at this, and might perhaps have been sorry that he had not named a higher sum. But under the circumstances he understood only too well the man's desire to get away, and would much rather have had some talk as to the payment, anything that would keep his customer a little longer in his store. "There, now we're ready. I'll pack up your old things for you, or perhaps we can make a deal for them. I pay the highest prices in the city," said Goldstam, with an apparent eagerness which he hoped would deceive the customer. But the man had already turned towards the door and called back over his shoulder, "You can keep the old things. I don't want them." As he spoke he opened the door of the store and stood face to face with the policeman holding a revolver. He turned with a curse back into the room, but the dealer was nowhere to be seen. David Goldstam had done his duty to the public in spite of his fear. Now, seeing that the police had arrived, he could think of his duty to his family. This duty was plainly to save his own life, and when the tramp turned again to look for him, he had disappeared out of the back door. "Not a move, or I will shoot," cried the policeman, and now two others appeared behind him and came into the store. But the tramp made no attempt to escape. He stood pale and trembling while they put the handcuffs on him and let them take him away without any resistance. He was put on the evening express for Vienna and taken to police headquarters in that city. He made no protest nor any attempt to escape, but he refused to utter a word on the entire journey. End of chapter 5.